Today, I want to share with you a principle that's not necessarily rooted in infidelity, but it definitely can help infidelity for sure. And it's the principle of the Four Horsemen. John Gottman, who is kind of the therapist to therapist of couples therapy and marriage therapy, he's brilliant. He lays this out in one of his most recent books, which is phenomenal. I think the book is called 7 Strategies to really help you be married for 70 years. Call it that. But you can Google it, find it on Amazon. It's pretty easy. It's a phenomenal book. And in his book, he identifies the Four Horsemen. And his Four Horsemen are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And he basically goes on to say that if your marriage is struggling with any of the Four Horsemen, or all of the Four Horsemen, let's be honest, he can predict your marriage's divorce within an accuracy of roughly 70 some odd percent. What he kind of boils it down to is to say, listen, if one or all 4 of the horsemen are living and residing in your marriage, there's a pretty good likelihood that you're going to have your marriage end in divorce. Now, every marriage struggles with, at some time, criticism and contempt. And there's defensiveness, and then there's stonewalling. But if that is how we manage conflict, if that is how we cooperate with each other, if that's how we go back and forth with criticism and contempt and stonewalling and defensiveness, if that's our only problem-solving skill, we're doomed. And the number one thing that he says, number one horseman that can predict divorce is contempt. So look at it through the eyes of infidelity. What's the number one emotion that a betrayed spouse probably feels? It's somewhere hovering in the area of contempt. And anybody that's been through it would tell you that it's justifiable contempt. They've cheated. They've broken the boundaries, the covenant of marriage. They've gone somewhere else. We could talk about that for hours. But why wouldn't you feel contempt? So let me lay it out for you. The number one easily predictable variable that produces divorce is contempt. And what's one of the main emotions that a betrayed spouse feels? Contempt. And so the more that you prolong things that produce contempt, the more that you are creating the statistical probability that your marriage isn't going to work. Here's how it works. If you are trickling out truth, you're producing more contempt by the betrayed spouse, which is producing a greater probability that you're not going to make it. If you're not being honest, if you're not working on your restoration process, your betrayed spouse is probably feeling more and more contempt for you, and that's making it harder and harder for them to be able to give restoration a fair shot. So I want to be a little bit tough on you, unfaithful. What are you doing to produce contempt in the heart of your spouse? You've already done enough that would produce contempt. And so the more that you do things that produce contempt, the more you're giving yourself a very unlikelihood that you're going to make it. Time and time again, betrayed spouses will tell you they could get over the infidelity. It was hard as hell to get over the deception, the lying, the double life. They could get over, Rick says it this way, they could get over where you put your genitals. They can't get over the fact that you wouldn't stop lying and deceiving and trickle truthing and drip feeding them all the details. It's just a fact. If you look at the data, betrayed spouses, men and women, they can typically, because there's always an exception, but they can typically get over the affair, the physical nature of it, or even the emotional connection. They can get over it, but they can't get over the fact that you kept lying, or that you held it out for so long, or that you swore that that was not true, and then only one day later to come up and say, yes, it was true. I lied to you time and time again. That is what produces contempt, and that contempt is what makes it so incredibly hard for them to forgive you. Essentially, Gottman said it this way, is that it's incredibly hard to find restoration or repair with your spouse when you're convinced that your spouse is disgusted by you. So think about that. If you feel disgust from your spouse, it's incredibly hard to find restoration or healing to your marriage. Now, if you're a betrayed spouse, you're probably dealing with enough contempt as it is, and you go, well, how do I get out of the contempt? Well, you get out of the contempt by forgiveness. But you may not be ready to forgive, and so how do you forgive? You have to grieve. So as you grieve, you can then move towards forgiveness, and as you move towards and through forgiveness, it will diffuse the contempt. Unfaithful, stop doing contemptuous things. If you stop producing even more contempt than you've already produced, you'll probably see a shift slowly but surely towards restoration, towards reconnection, towards even repair within the relationship. So you need three things to help diffuse the contempt. Number one is you need safety. And safety produces an opportunity for forgiveness, for grieving, for reconnection, for honesty, for getting all the truth out. You've got to find safety. Number two is you need a strategy, and that strategy typically will go hand in hand with safety. If you don't have safety, you're not going to see that strategy work. If you have a strategy, but you don't have safety, we got a problem. So as you have safety, it's going to help you. Number two is you need a strategy. Number three, I say it this way, you need the setting of expectations. And that's what I really try and do through these vlogs, is really set some expectations that you can say, oh, that's pretty normal, or, ooh, that's highly abnormal, or, ooh, I'm glad that we weren't like Samuel and Samantha, or, oh, maybe there's some hope because we've seen this. And so as you can get the setting of the right expectations, you can understand there's going to be contempt, but it doesn't have to win. There's going to be criticism. It doesn't have to win. There's going to be some stonewalling, but it doesn't have to win, and there's certainly going to be some defensiveness. But as we work on being able to deal with the contempt and make some right choices, the Four Horsemen do not need to win.